Hello, and welcome back to another story smithing episode. We are actually picking up today in the middle of chapter 5, so we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I'm in the middle of writing the chapter and have come to kind of an interesting combat scene, and I think it would be helpful for me and hopefully for anybody that's listening to see how I would approach that scene. This is a little bit like in math class when you need to write down your work to how you got to your answer. This would be me kind of outlining that approach of how I would go about writing this scene. And then hopefully by the end, I'll have written it. We'll sort of be able to see if we accomplished the objectives we had, and then kind of have a roadmap or a framework for approaching scenes in the future. So a couple things. We've got kind of a rough cover here. I'm pretty super happy with it, I should say. I think it's pretty cool. This is kind of going to be the artwork moving forward through the drafting, I think. It kind of hits the high points. These are characters you haven't probably read about yet, assuming you're sort of listening to these chronologically. I haven't really released any writing yet, but these are our main characters. Today, I'll be stepping into chapter 5, like I said, and our goal is not only to write a fight scene, but to demonstrate things about these characters. There's some sort of adage in TV that, every episode, the viewer should learn something new about, the main character. Even in a show like The Office or something like that, you think there's so many episodes, but if you really focus on a particular one, you should see, a new detail, a new preference, a new habit or quirk of the character come forward. So our goal in this fight scene, if I jump down here into chapter 5, is to do that for the characters, also do that for the world building. So there's lots of new things that can be shown in this fight scene. In fact, that's why there's a scene here. So my approach, there's 1,000 ways you could go about this. Honestly, what I do most of the time is just write the scene, and you usually hit the high points. You kind of subconsciously know, like specifically here, I know what happens roughly in the next chapter. And over the course of the book, I have the whole arc. So since you sort of know where you're headed, it gives you the high points you want to hit. But by just rolling through the scene without a lot of thought beforehand, you do miss some key pieces that you then have to go back and sort of stitch in after the first draft, which is fine. That's part of the process. I've done a lot of tweaking, a lot of massaging so far. In fact, I just went back into an earlier piece of chapter 5 and just added in a key detail. So that's natural. I think my goal here, though, is just to get as much done the first time through, with the goal of testing myself in that way, and also giving you a more kind of complete first swing at this. So that's the goal here. Just a few details. Maybe I'll try and be really quick here about where we're at in chapter 5. So by chapter 5, our 4 characters are a squad, and they've been entered into what's called the Delve. So they are in this kind of simulation, seemingly simulation, maybe real life, we're not quite sure. And there are mobs around them. So these are kind of like creatures from a video game, essentially. The characters that, this is a lit RPG story. So our 4 characters have chosen different classes. They are starting to unlock their first abilities. And as they fight, things happen like level ups, skill increases, there's loot from enemies, all those sorts of things. So in chapter 5 specifically, we've already survived the first fight. One character is unconscious. She ran out of mana. So as we get into this scene here, one of our key pieces is going to be, can we revive her in time, before it's too late? Because Her name's Bailey. She was instrumental in the first fight. She pretty much saved everybody, and that's why she had to use all of her mana. So that's one of our characters. Our main character, Jack, he's just returned from kind of a scouting mission. His goal of that was to find some mana, like a mana potion for Bailey. He did not, so he just defeated a stronger enemy by himself. So he's leveled up quite a bit. We've got some new, kind of a new upgrade to show off for him. Our third character's name is Atlas. He's a knight, and he's got a new ability and a new perk to demonstrate here. And then our last character is Chandler. He's kind of a coward. He's not really going to be involved in the fighting, but he's working on what's called setting up camp, which is a mechanic in this delve. And in doing so, that's going to allow him to revive Bailey. So that's a little bit of where each of our characters are. They are all physically located in a cave, and there are a swarm of these bird mobs just outside that are about to discover them. So that's kind of the setup for where we are. The idea is it's pretty obvious they're about to get swarmed by roughly 50 of these. They're called, what did I call them? Hawkthorn. 50 hawkthorns, which I'm pretty happy about that name. They're based off of a hawthorn tree. Pretty much every mob in this delve is either plant-based or it's like a ground or stone-based. There's no actual like animal-based mobs. That's mostly just because this is YA focused, and I'd rather our characters be fighting, you know, like what Jack just fought was a cinder hog. It was a kind of a viney, it's like a hog, a boar with a body made out of this viney material. And you know, instead of blood or anything like that, it's got sap. So it's just a little bit of a, you know, more PG reskinning of what mobs look like. So that's kind of the idea. It also gives an aesthetic for, you know, what sort of creatures we can expect, and ultimately it'll lead into who the organizer or the leader of this kind of enemy team is. So that's, you know, that's a long ways away, but in short, there's a reason the mobs are kind of plant or stone based. So anyway, we're here about to jump into the fight scene. My goal, like I said, there's a million ways to approach this. I think I want to focus by character and just sort of create a list of, here's all the things we want to show in this scene, right? It's not enough just to write kind of an interesting dynamic fight scene. That's not helpful. What we want to do is reveal new information, and we want to do that in the actual events of the scene. So let's get started on that. So our characters are Jack, Atlas, Chandler, and Bailey. And then let's create a world building elements here. And real quick, for this episode, I'm actually hoping to identify these elements and then write either the whole scene or portions of it and sort of circle back to revisit those. We'll see if I can get through all that in nap time here. If I can't, we may just stick with this world building or this brainstorming piece. So for Jack, he's just leveled up 3 times. So he's got a significant boost to vigor and grace. These are 2 traits, 2 sort of the traditional, you know, things like constitution, dexterity, strength. Vigor and grace slot into those areas. So he's just got a big boost to that after leveling up from his previous fight. So we want to show that he is noticeably quicker in his attacks and in his movement, maybe a little more coordinated, and also he's got a higher health pool. So that's important. He's also earned 1 ability point and 1 perk point. The previous battle ended just before the scene we're picking up here, so we didn't have time to actually spend his ability point or perk point. So these would be potential things he could invest in. Long story short, these are actually quite rare. It's not very common to get these, so this is really important. I'm kind of tempted to actually make him spend these in battle in order to sort of save the team. The reason for that being it shows more about his character, that he's willing to make the play to save the team rather than maybe like maybe try and make a more of a long-term play for himself. I think that's really important to show. So let me add a note here. Another thing it can do is, for him to actually be able to choose the ability point, or his new ability and his new perk in combat, shows that he's able to kind of multitask, or he's able to be level-headed enough in combat to open up his menu, check his new ability, what are the options, choose one. And I think that's important to show as well. All right, so that's pretty good. If there's one thing I learn with each chapter, each story, it's that iteration is probably the most undervalued or underrated aspect of writing. The difference between a first draft and the draft that reaches the reader should be significant. There should be enhancements, polishing, details added in, things like that. So I'll just iterate here, hopefully, through our characters, and we can return to Jack in a bit and maybe see if there's other things we can add. So for Atlas, like I said, he's a tank. I think there's a few things about his personality we can show here, as well as his abilities. I just finished showing kind of 2 key personality pieces here. So over the first 4 or 5 chapters, I've been building Jack as the leader of this group, and Atlas is pretty agreeable. He's pretty loyal. He doesn't necessarily have that leader quality, and I'm just reinforcing that here in this scene. Atlas has activated a certain buff. It takes 10 seconds of him standing in the same place to activate, so there's a certain barrier to entry there. Jack asked him to move. So, for a particular reason here, he thinks maybe they can avoid being seen if Atlas moves out of the entryway, and Atlas follows. He agrees, he moves. So that's just a small event that's showing that Atlas is willing to follow Jack. So things like that, we're going to want to continue reiterating in combat. So follows Jack's orders. Okay, so we're going to need a few of those in there to continue building up sort of the dynamic between these two. Obviously, you haven't probably had a chance to read any of this, so you haven't met Bailey yet. She's going to be a little bit more strong-willed. She's non-agreeable with Jack most of the time. So when she is revived later in this combat, we want to see some friction between her and Jack. So back to Atlas. We've got a piece on his personality there. In terms of his abilities, he's just earned 2 really important upgrades. I maybe made these a little bit too strong. We'll see if I have to nerf them. But he's got a new perk called Rooted and a new ability called Turtle. These are actually things Jack hasn't seen necessarily. He's just heard about the perk Rooted, He doesn't actually know about Turtle yet, the ability Turtle. So because Jack had to run out to try and find something for Bailey. So this is as much a reveal for Jack as it is for the reader, which is kind of fun. That was intentional. So I'm going to add a note here. Should be surprising, impressive. So what does that actually mean? Rooted is a perk that increases vigor if you're standing still for more than 10 seconds. So it makes Atlas tankier. Turtle actually does the same. It creates a shield around that person for a certain amount of time when it's activated. So these are basically both just abilities or perks that would increase his ability to take damage. So in the actual scene, we need there to be an event where Atlas is taking significant damage in the entryway. Then Rooted kicks in, then Turtle, and his health is really low. And what would actually make that better? Here we go. What would actually make the Turtle ability more impressive, right? Because what we want to do is surprise, is show some kind of strength for Atlas. If he's just getting attacked by these hawkthorns, and then he just uses Turtle to withstand a bunch of damage, that's good. But we want it to be sort of at the last moment, almost like it is saving him. So I think to make that hit harder, what we can do is Atlas actually levels up in the fight. This is something Jack was just telling him about earlier. Let's see. Somewhere right up here, I thought I had added that. Oh, here we go. If you level up during the fight, you can spend your skill points to regain health. Do it if you get low. So I think the order of operations here is Atlas, once these hawkthorns start spot Jack and his crew, Atlas goes into the entryway to try and block them off. He starts getting attacked. Rooted takes place, so his vigor doubles because he's been standing there. And then he starts to, get whittled down. He's fighting, he levels up, and then based on Jack's direction there, Atlas levels up in combat. He actually goes into his character tab and spends his skill points. That's going to heal him. So we're actually going to see that effect in combat, which is the first time that is shown. So I'm going to add that down here in world building. Every other time that level up mechanic's been used, it's been outside of combat. All right, so Atlas gets to do that. So that's going to be big. And yes, that is borrowed from Skyrim. Where were we? Yeah, so he levels up. I guess prior to that, he's going to use something called ointment. This is an item that doubles your health regen. So he's going to start taking damage. Guess I ought to write this out if I'm going to do it properly. Okay, so he starts taking damage, uses ointment, Rooted kicks in, lots of fighting. He levels up and heals himself, and then he starts getting really low in his health, and that's when we use Turtle finally. So from the reader's perspective, the reader's aware of ointment. The reader is aware of this ability to heal yourself with a level up, though we haven't actually seen it in combat. The reader's also aware of how the rooted ability roughly works. So all of this is going to be understood by the reader. We also know Atlas has an ability, but we don't know what it is. We don't know what it does. So my hope here is that when we use Turtle, this is a turning point. this should be a turning point. Let me put it that way. Okay, it should be the turning point because one, that makes the scene stronger. It also underlines kind of the effectiveness or the power of this ability. So combining the fact that this is a surprise with how powerful it is, with how important it is in this fight, I think that's how we make this kind of reveal as strong as possible. So that's what's going on for Atlas. Trying to think if there's anything else you need to be aware of. What we could do is, yeah, this is what we want to do. Start foreshadowing some synergy between Atlas and Jack. I should add one more thing here while I'm thinking of it. So in the first fight, Atlas Atlas defeated some enemies by basically doing a cannonball on them. Oh, that's right. I'm remembering something now. He did a cannonball on them. He got kind of a loot box later, and the loot box actually contained cannonballs. Those are going to be valuable, later. Right now they seem a little bit odd. So what we want to do is figure out a way to use cannonballs or gravity in some way. Eventually, way later, like end of book 1 later, Atlas is going to become what's called a gravity knight. That's going to be the variant, another word for a class. That's going to become the variant that he chooses. So he's going to start getting kind of more gravity-based abilities. So what we need to do now is start foreshadowing that and building up his kind of affinity for using his extra height and weight. And yeah, weight is probably the best word, as a fighting tool rather than just the standard sword like most of the other knights are using. So we're going to do that. And then lastly, Atlas and Jack are really the main combat pair in this squad, so we want to start showing a little bit of synergy. If I'm thinking about Atlas using his weight, and how that could lead to a synergy, even it could just be while Atlas is being attacked, Jack picks them off. I mean, this isn't anything that clever, but we also don't really have abilities that can start stacking on themselves yet. So Atlas is going to be drawing a lot of the aggro. Jack can kind of pick them off with his knife or an arrow during that time. So I think that's good. Chandler, like I said earlier, he's actually does not have a class right now. His class is called Other, which the idea is it can become just about anything, but in the beginning it's super weak and it has no specialty. So that was not a decision made by Chandler. He just didn't pick a class and he got assigned to Other. So what do we want to show about Chandler here? First and foremost, he has an egg. So this is something that came up at the end of, I think it was chapter 3 maybe, but eventually Chandler is going to become a tamer, which is a super powerful class, where he's kind of like a Pokemon trainer. He's able to befriend mobs and kind of use them in combat. And he's discovered an egg already. So he's got this really strong like desire to protect this egg. It's like his thing. But he also is a complete coward and does not want to fight. So I think what we want to do here is show him fighting to protect the egg, because every scene that the reader has seen Chandler in that's been like a combat scene so far, I should say the only scene, he was literally lying in a puddle of water just trying to like hide. So he's been kind of the most blatant coward ever. So for him to actually do a little fighting, I think is going to be significant. So he's going to bop a hawkthorn with his shield when it attacks the egg. So we could do that. I'm debating. So I did give the hawkthorns a certain ability. They're carrying these red berries in their talons, and the berries give off kind of a smoke that has a certain debuff. So the characters are sitting in a cave, like I mentioned earlier, which is not necessarily where you want to be if the enemy's got area of effect smoke bombs. So I could have some of that smoke get in there, and Chandler like dives on the egg or something like that to protect it. I think that could be realistic. Otherwise, he could be on berry duty, throwing the berries out. I think that's possible. I probably need to figure out what the berries do. They can't be too dangerous. They could, let's see, they could decrease a trait. They could give a certain debuff. They could just be like visually disorienting. But I think what we want to do, and this is down to the world building piece, we want to introduce a debuff. That's not something the character or the reader's actually seen yet. So if these have a certain debuff, I think that'll be good. We can show that that's a thing. We can let Jack realize that. Again, showing his kind of level-headedness in combat. And then he has to coordinate how the squad is going to handle that. Do they run outside and risk being more in the open for the be more out in the open for these birds to attack them, or does he coordinate a plan, which is going to be Chandler like chucking these berries out? So I think that gives us some more evidence or more opportunity to show some character dynamics. We just need to figure out what these berries do. Debuff that it could be like a compounding dizziness. We could call it like dizzy. I think that might be interesting. Yeah, I don't want it to be really that dangerous, like something that is poisonous, or like prevents magic from being used or something. Yeah, we'll just call it dizzy. So each second that you're in smoke, you get a stack of this dizzy debuff, and then you can imagine what that's going to do after a while. All right, so back to Chandler in the combat. So we're showing his connection to the egg. He is going to listen to Jack and show a little bit of courage by throwing these berries out. At least he's interacting, even if he's not fighting. I think that's a nice step. That's probably equally realistic or equally, equally likely as him actually fighting to protect his egg. If we do this berry throwing thing now, then in the next fight or in a future fight, we can have him actually engage, like in hand-to-hand combat or whatever, to protect the egg. So that gives us that option down the road. One other thing I was going to say, is Chandler's main role here at this point. If we look up here for a bit, the first thing Jack says when he gets back to the cave is he tells Chandler we need to make camp here. It should wake Bailey up. So from that point forward, Chandler is basically diving into the interface options, and he's trying to figure out how they can designate this cave as their camp. Again, this is back to him kind of following Chandler. You can see Chandler following Jack. You can see Chandler doesn't necessarily listen right away, but after a reason he does. So I'm trying to, continue to demonstrate those character mechanics. But what we're trying to show here is that Chandler is smart, even if he's a coward, and he's going to figure out how to set up the camp. So he's going to do that. Effect of setting up the camp is that it has a very minimal like health and mana regen property, but that mana regen is what's going to revive Bailey, who's been knocked out because she's out of mana. So he's going to do that. Anything else Chandler's doing? Obviously, he's got to be doing some screaming. That's kind of Chandler's thing. And then when we get to that berry part, he'll be throwing the berries back out. Okay. Bailey, she is out of mana, so she's asleep. Once Chandler does his camp, she wakes up. Let's assume... maybe this is a question. All the other characters got loot boxes from the first fight. I could give Bailey a loot box and put a mana potion in there, which lets her, that would let her get her mana back. What I'd like instead actually is Jack shouts at her to to spend her skill points, and yeah, so Jack does that. She does and regains mana. So when she spends her skill points, she'll regain the mana. And then she's going to be able to use she's got this ability called Dazzle, which is really strong. Yeah, I'm just having a few thoughts about the sequence here. But anyway, she's got this ability called Dazzle. It's an area of effect damage and healing spell, but it's kind of weak at both. So once she gets her mana back, she can use that. What else do we need to show here? Yeah, some friction between her and Jack. Be good. The thing I just thought, about the sequence, what's Atlas's last thing after Turtle? Right, so we had this whole sequence for Atlas with the last thing he does to try and mitigate the damage or withstand the damage to be his turtle ability. So that's going to be the turning point in the battle. We can assume, how do I phrase this? Both sides continue to get weakened. Looks like Atlas might go down. Up until he uses turtle. It is hard to type sometimes. Seemed like squad was going to get wiped. Okay, he uses turtle. That gives them a few seconds of basically invulnerability. They take down more. The tide of the battle turns, and then at that point it looks like it's more going to be anybody's battle to win. And then kind of towards the end, Bailey is revived. She's able to use Dazzle, and that's going to kind of heal Atlas up from, maybe he gets down to like a quarter health or something, and he's used up all of his tricks. That'll be the boost he needs to stay, not get eliminated, and it'll also pretty much take out the rest of these low-level mobs. So I think that's good. World building elements. What else do we need to show here? We've got the level up mechanic, berries effect. let's see. This is that point about iterating. So if I sat here for 15 minutes, I'd probably come up with a few more things I wanted to show. Or you just write it, and then in the course of writing or as you're reading through it, you think of those things. I think figuring them out now is a little bit more efficient and makes the process a little easier. But sometimes you can't do it exactly that way every time. Okay, well, we've got these pieces. I guess with the thought of doing this, creating a framework, let's go ahead and sort of merge these together into what you could call an outline, I guess. So where we are right now is Jack has gotten back. He's sort of given the pre-battle directions. He's just about to check with Chandler how the camp is coming, and Jack is going to see hawkthorns approaching. So that's where we are. Basically the battle is just about to begin. So we need to identify our sequence. So Jack sees hawkthorns. He hopes to hide the squad. Hawkthorns see. See them. We don't want to make this random. We want to give a little something here, a reason. So it could be the obvious thing is Chandler. Make Chandler, have some sort of noise or whatever that they hear. I think we'll just go with that for now. Again, back to the iteration point. If we need to change that, we can. So Chandler makes some kind of noise. This could be successfully setting up camp. I kind of like that. Doing it quickly shows he's actually pretty intelligent, even if he's really scared. It also gets Bailey into the scene earlier, which she hasn't had a lot of face time yet, so to get her in there is actually good. We could rationalize something with the egg, or even just him, squeaking in fright as these birds fly by. But I think doing the camp can be kind of interesting to bring Bailey in right away. Okay, so we're gonna do that. Hawkthorns. Boy, it's too bad that's not a real word. Hawkthorns here and begin barraging cave with thorns. They're able to kind of spit thorns from their beak, so they're kind of like a ranged flying unit. So that while that's happening, Jack tells Bailey to level up and use her skill points to regain mana. She argues because that's kind of what Bailey does. So we need a reason there. Maybe she doesn't want to yet, or wants to kind of take her time to decide what's going to be the best, skill investment. So that's happening. We could have a beat here where Jack looks at his abilities and perks as well. What did we say about that? I think use these in combat to save. So I think maybe we save these for later. Actually, what we can do, Jack scans new ability and perk options, but doesn't have time to pick. So if we make him aware of that later, then way later, he can actually pick something to help swing the battle. So that's, we'll just add that in there. So that's happening at the same time he's arguing with her. He's also scanning his abilities. We need the action to ramp up. So Hawkthorns start dive bombing and flying in the cave. Yeah, at this point, Jack and Atlas assume like battle positions, because basically Bailey's out of mana. Chandler doesn't want anything to do with this, so Jack and Atlas assume battle positions, which is entrance of the cave. And then Atlas's, big thing is that rooted perk, which doubles his vigor, so he's staying in place there, trying to just, get that going. So the likely thing is Atlas starts getting bombed or, damaged. Whoops, sorry about that. Yeah, Atlas starts getting damaged. And he uses ointment. So that was our next thing. That's gonna get him regaining health fairly quickly. Jack is trying to figure out the battle strategy. So that's Jack's like main role in this squad. He's not necessarily going to be he does have offensive potential, but more than that, he's kind of a tactician. He's got strategy. Since he can be pretty clear-headed. For good measure, let's put in a Chandler scream here, right? We're kind of foiling Chandler freaking out with Jack locking in and getting calm and trying to figure out the plan. So, so Jack's doing that. I would assume, by the way, Jack has like 4 arrows at this point. So we could have him, let's say Jack shoots like 2 arrows. Is that, I'm trying to think if that's even smart, if that's something we want to do. Let's do it. Let's let him hit 1. So he hits 1. Basically, he's been an awful shot up to this point. So he just put a lot of points in his grace trait. So one of the effects of that is basically a slightly better aim. So for him to hit 1 bird, we'll say like he feels surprised, feels like the grace stat helped big time. So we'll do that. And his misfire was close as well. So we're showing that he's getting better. All right, so that's going on. Meanwhile, Bailey is not listening to him. She's kind of trying to figure out what to do. Yeah, so we're showing her friction there. She's going to wait until later to do her mana thing. So later we're going to need Jack to like yell again for her to do that. Jack still has his ability and perk point. I think... do we have those birds start ramping up their attack on Atlas, or do they start like dive bombing with their berry bombs? Let's say at this point rooted kicks in. Here's how we do it. Okay, let's give one more beat here. They start we'll just call it double focusing on Atlas. His health starts getting low. Rooted kicks in. His health bar doubles. Or I should say, his health bar seems to fall half as quickly. Since his vigor is doubled. So that's good. So now since his health is basically doubled, it's falling a lot slower. That's going to change the kind of attack pattern of these birds. So they change focus to dive bombing, cave with berries. Smoke starts flooding the cave. Where's Jack at? He shoots 2, hits 1 bird. Once they start focusing on Atlas, Jack shifts focus to attacking close birds. And then we're gonna, I'm kind of playing with this idea of like a long-term fighting style for Jack, being like switching to knife and arrow. I'm kind of thinking about this. I don't know if I like it. Like when Jack is in an up close and personal fight, if he uses his knife and then also has like an arrow in his other hand. I do like the idea of the traditional ranger with, you know, just a knife or a knife and a throwing knife, depending on what kind of flavor you're reading it. The arrow in the other hand is kind of odd. What I would like about it potentially, there's a lot of synergies down the line with Atlas that would be good. I could also see like there's all sorts of different types of arrows in this game. Like once he starts getting some real loot, or meets up with somebody that has abilities to manipulate arrows, Jack could get basically like a throwing knife version of an arrow like that. That would be interesting. Or just, I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen with that. So I think there's long-term potential to have kind of a new technique emerge here where it does make sense to have like a knife and an arrow paired together. Right now it just feels a little bit awkward, like it's two pokey things that he's using, but I guess it gives him two things to use now. Even if the arrow's not that good, it's better than his puny little fist. So I guess we'll do that. At this point he only has one arrow left in his quiver. All right, so Atlas's rooted kicks in. They start dive bombing. Jack gets Chandler calmed and on berry duty. This is a kind of a logical place for him to yell at. Yell is a little strong, but yell at Bailey to level up and get her mana. All right, so Atlas is still getting bombed a little bit. What's his next thing in his sequence? Level up and heals himself. Okay. So Atlas's health is getting low. How about, let's do this. Let's kind of split the focus. Fight splits in two. Inside. Jack focuses on birds inside to take them down. Outside. Atlas's health is getting low. He levels up. All right, so that's Atlas's big heal. His big heal pretty much gone. I guess maybe it's better for him to use Turtle first, but maybe, you know, this isn't going to play in the most optimal way. Maybe, right, like he's, you know, he just levels up instead of using Turtle. I think that's fine, right? He's a freshman. He's not like practiced this a million times, this sort of a combat situation. So he levels up. He's going to get his health back, even though it would have been better to Turtle and then level up to regain the health and the mana. That's fine. That kind of plays into his character too. Like Atlas isn't necessarily the smartest. So that's fine. So he levels up, regaining health. Where do we get here? So next is the turtle. Okay. So we want, what do we want here? By the time Jack takes out inside birds, Atlas is down low again. We need like a really strong emotional beat here. Jack gets terrified. Atlas is going to go down. Yells at Bailey again. Atlas uses turtle. So this is a 5-second ability. I think that's what I've got it at. I'll have to check. It's only a few seconds. So we've got a few seconds here. And what I'm thinking, Atlas uses turtle and ducks out of the entryway. So this is him kind of, yeah, this is Atlas saying like, okay, I'm tapping out. This is all I've got. I like that because what we can do, yeah, this is actually pretty sweet. Let's say we're down to about 10 birds. Jack decides to try and take them and protect the squad. How do we make this stronger? I'm kind of jumping through a few thoughts here, so I'll try and rewind once I get this laid out. Jack sees Atlas's health is ticking up. He needs about 30 seconds to be significantly healed, and to be fairly healed and ready to save the others. Jack is going to buy the time. All right. So I think we've got a good chance here to show off some of Jack's personality. So back to 13A here. So Atlas gets really hurt. He uses turtle, and then he gets out of the entryway. So he's lost his rooted buff, and he's left the combat, or like the immediate combat. There's the 10 birds outside, and Jack knows like if those birds get in here, you know, they're going to make short work of Atlas and kind of move on to the others. So Jack actually goes out. He goes out to fight them. With the idea, he sees Atlas's health is improving based off of that ointment item used earlier. So if he can just buy Atlas some time, then Atlas will probably be strong enough to like protect the others and finish off the rest of the birds. So Jack goes out. This is his like whatever big fight scene. He takes out, let's say 3. 3 seems about right. Starts taking a lot of damage. And then Bailey uses Dazzle. Maybe more than 10. Like we got to make this more interesting. Let's go like 20. Because we start with 50. Let's leave this at like 20. Yeah, okay, so he takes out 3. He's getting really low. Bailey uses Dazzle, which heals him and starts hurting the others. I should say damaging. There's been a global pain like removal, so things don't actually feel pain in here, which is back to that, you know, PG version of the genre. So these mobs are not actually feeling pain, but they're taking damage. So Bailey has used Dazzle. Jack starts to heal. The birds start taking damage. And then another character beat. Atlas charges in, even though he's on low health. This is him recognizing that Dazzle will help protect. And he's like he's becoming, or whatever, he's becoming a good friend, a brave, whatever, a brave friend, we'll say. So I think that's pretty good. You know, in that last thing, we've got a few things going for us, right? Jack's kind of accepted like himself as a sacrifice, or at least consider that and chosen it. Atlas charges in to fight alongside Jack. We want to make that a little bit stronger by showing like the outcome isn't guaranteed for him to charge in. Like maybe it would have been a little bit safer for him to just hang back and keep healing up, but instead he charges in, even though, you know, we're not quite sure if him and Jack and Bailey's Dazzle will, you know, wipe the rest of them out. So we've got a really strong kind of, really strong friendship budding there between Jack and Atlas. Just thinking more about how to make this stronger. He locks eyes with Atlas and nods or something. We need to show that Atlas understands what Jack is doing, and that Jack wants him to protect the others. I think that's a really good spot to have that exchange or that understanding between them. And then when Atlas charges out later, have a little banter. We can have a little banter where Jack has told Atlas like basically to stay in there, and then this is like sort of the first time Atlas has not listened to Jack for very good reason, obviously. So I think that's a nice little foil's not the right word, but we're introducing a little bit of kind of humor or lightness there after all the seriousness. So I think that's a pretty decent little outline. I'm just going to take a quick look through our notes and see if we missed anything. Oh, we did miss this right here. Right off the bat. So Jack still has that ability in perk point. Where should that fit? That should be when he goes out to fight. Because this is like his last ditch effort. So we'll have to figure that out, what those are. But that's Jack going kind of all in. We could, trying to think if Atlas would level up in that fight. I feel like he probably would. Gosh, if there's 50 of them, he's taking so much damage. That's gotta level him up. Which is fine. That's totally fine. Where does he level up the first time? Starts health getting low. Okay, so here's where he levels up, regaining health. Maybe we have to stretch this out. So fight splits in two. He levels up, regaining health. Double fight continues. Atlas levels up again while he's the sole target of outside birds. He he invests points again to re-heal. All right, I think that's realistic. He should be getting tons of experience from this, so we can just have that double fight moment play out a little bit longer, because if there's like 30 birds outside or more, roughly, or even 20, like we said at the end, if they're all just firing on Atlas, like he's gonna be getting a lot of experience. So that's good. Let's see. Okay, so we've implemented the ability point and perk point. We're gonna figure those out probably during the writing process. I'll actually, figure out what those should do. Realizes the berries debuff. I think we've got that implied. Where are we here? Oh, on berry duty. Okay, Jack figures out what berries do. And this is actually important, right? I said this is the first time debuffs have been shown. We need to show like on the interface where those appear. So for Jack to like see where those appear on the interface, that shows the reader where they appear. I think that's helpful. Okay, so that's all of Jack's things done. We've turtled. Oh, cannonball or gravity? Let's see. Got a wild idea about these cannonballs, actually. All right, so when this splits in two, yeah, I think this is neat, right? Anytime you can surprise the reader, that's usually good. And sometimes it's hard to do that if the main character is like the leader of the group, because everybody should kind of be following the plan. But we've got a chance to surprise here because Jack is going to be focused on the inside birds and Atlas is going to be outside. So fight splits in two. Fighting continues. He invests points again to heal. So Jack is still fighting. Atlas builds barricade of cannonballs, stacking them like, gosh, I don't know, stacking them in a rocky, what am I trying to say here? I want him to make some sort of a structure or like a wall out of these cannonballs. If there's like a corner he can stack them up in and kind of crouch behind to use them as a shield, I think that's sort of neat. Yeah, we can leave that for the writer crew to figure out. Yeah, because these are still too strong. Maybe since he's leveled up and he's put points into stuff, if he put some points into his might, maybe he's strong enough to actually throw them. Let's do that. Also starts throwing some cannonballs at birds and hitting a few. I think that's fun, right? Because Atlas's thing is he's really tanky and he's really strong. And I think he can start to get to the point where he can throw these cannonballs, maybe not that far, but he can throw them. And that's going to lean really nicely into that Gravity Knight variant way down the line, because basically he's just using weight and gravity to be his weapon. He's better with that than his actual sword. So I think that's good. And then back to my point about surprising the reader, Jack is going to turn around after finishing off these inside birds. Atlas is going to be low health again, but he's going to be like fighting from behind this barricade of like cannonballs, just like chucking cannonballs out at the hawkthorns, which is not what he was doing when, not what he was doing when Jack was fighting alongside of him. So I think that should be interesting. Seems like Atlas is kind of the key player of this fight. Like he's got lots of things going on. I'm a little bit worried Bailey is going to be like underutilized. What do we want here? Right, if she's waiting until the end, like after all this has happened, we need a stronger reason than her just like not wanting to suboptimally spend her points. So what do we do? We could have her spend her points right away when Jack tells her, use Dazzle on them, and then it just not be as effective as we would have hoped. That's an option. Maybe let's do that actually. Okay, she can still argue, but listens after a few seconds, uses Dazzle on outside. And here's what, I think here's what we need. She uses Dazzle, but it's not as effective as we thought. That's going to be since it's nighttime, but they don't know that yet. Since it's nighttime, she uses about half her mana on this attempt. So basically she's not got a lot left in the tank. maybe she can use even more than half. Whatever. We'll say 2/3. So she's going to use a lot of her mana here, and the goal, like Jack's goal, is she's just going to wipe these mobs, just like with the very, very first fight they had. But since it's nighttime, her dazzle is a lot weaker, and so it's not going to work quite like that. Then they need to revert or switch to a different plan, battle positions, and away we go. I think that's good, and then that can give us, she's only got 1/3 of the dazzle left. And I think that actually makes this last part a little bit stronger, because we know there's not we know the win condition is not she just spends skill points and gets her dazzle and just wipes. We know it's not that effective, so the win condition has to be like teamwork, which is more interesting than Bailey just being grumpy about using her points. So I think that's great. Take a quick look through here for some of our last things. Synergy. We're going to have a little bit of more synergy. Let's say they split the attack inside and outside. So we're showing a lot of teamwork between Atlas and Jack here, which is great. Chandler. Yep, he's doing his berry thing. We're not doing this right now. We're doing all of Chandler's things. Bailey's good to go. I feel like there's a few world building pieces I'm sort of overlooking. Maybe things we've thought of but just aren't noted here. That's fine. I think we're good. So I'll go ahead and get writing on this. I think this took a little bit longer maybe than I was anticipating, so we'll end the episode there. I'll go ahead and write this, and hopefully I can come back and share that in some way to kind of see how this outline panned out into reality. So thanks for listening. Hope this was interesting, and this was a good experiment, good practice for me to approach a fight scene with a little bit more intention than just writing out the high points, writing out the scene, and then going back and backfilling a lot of details. So thanks for checking in, and hope this was interesting.